Good morning. It's Thursday morning, it's OTB AM. Welcome to the show. We're here between now and 10 o'clock. As per usual, to my left this morning, I have the one and only Galway's finest, Johnny Ward. Johnny, good morning.
Good morning. Haven't been on a while. Good to be back.
Too long. And Colm Boohig is here as per usual. Morning, Colm.
Shane and Johnny, good morning.
Galway, Cork and Monaghan represented this morning, folks. How are you keeping?
Very well. What a game of football last weekend. Gaelic football, still amazing to watch when it's good.
I didn't even have to ask him to bring it up. And he brings up Monaghan. Folks, if you want to talk...
We mightn't have brought up Monaghan. It could be one of the two games. It could be the other game.
You were talking about
Derry and Fermanagh for a while was good.
I was talking about Monaghan.
If you want to talk about it for the next 2 hours, we can. But feel people might get angry.
The gumption to go for a goal there, you're just like, what are you thinking?
Cojones, just
lack of experience. Put the ball over the bar, make it level, whatever. Scenes, hashtag
but
scenes.
But then I would never have had that moment of like my soul leaving my body in happiness and hugging random Monaghan people around me that I didn't know.
It must be right up there with the annual avoiding relegation on the last day kind of vibe.
The usual. This Monaghan team over the last 15 years have given me so much happiness.
Yeah,
I should
Look
be so
smile
thankful
on your
to
face.
them,
Yeah.
So it's an absolute buzz. So regardless of whether we win in All Ireland ever or not, they've given me some good days.
That's lovely.
So I'm going to take that. You got to take that to the bank.
Straight out of the Mayo kind of copybook there.
Well, yeah. Some people say it's a loser's attitude. I don't care. I've had some serious days supporting Monaghan, and that's what sport's all about, isn't it?
Well, if League of Ireland teams go into the Champions League or the Europa League or the Conference League, they've literally no chance to win it. That doesn't stop the enjoyment.
Oh yeah, you
no
pick up
chance.
A point against a so-called heavyweight.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're laughing. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now. We've got loads coming up between now and 10 o'clock, as I said. Shane Curran and Michael Meehan will be with us from 8 o'clock. The big one in the GA this weekend, of course, Roscommon and Galway. Plenty of hurling action as well. We'll get to that a little bit later in the show with Taggy Fogarty, who'll join us around 8:50. Vinnie Perth at 8:20, talking League of Ireland. Kind of semi-regular slot he's done with us now. Vinnie, and plenty of interesting strands and talking points from the League of Ireland to get into with him. John Duggan will join us for the sports news around 8:45. As I said, Taggy around 8:50 for the hurling, and Declan Lynch's, you had to be there at 9:05, and his picks are brilliant. Very niche and very brilliant, so stick with us for that there.
Also a sign of his age, you won't mind me saying, because he's gone back well into the 70s here, which
he's dug deep.
Yeah, he's dug deep. It's actually, Colm sent me on the list last night. It was like, I'm actually looking forward to talking about these events that I wasn't at, just to see, because different perspective on old Ireland as well.
It's going to be brilliant. We should touch on the back page of the Irish Independent this morning. Our good friend Dan McDonnell has a piece. Ferguson to resist United. It's which?
Bit of a stretch. Good friend.
Good friend.
He's on the show,
Good friend. Yeah. Colleague. Would you want to go colleague?
Yeah, acolyte,
yeah.
Subordinate.
If you're watching Dan, Johnny loves you really. Evan Ferguson is expected to commit his future to Brighton and turn down the opportunity, in the short term at least, to become the most expensive Irish footballer of all time. Manchester United reportedly waiting in the wings, €40 million plus in excess to instigate a discussion, and even then there's no guarantee it will be entertained by Brighton, is what Dan is writing today. Tottenham also keen on him being Harry Kane's long-term replacement. Mentions that he's on the radar of Man City and Chelsea as well, but the Manchester United interest appears to be the strongest. Darren Fletcher, who's a technical director at United, is known to be a fan of Evan Ferguson. So unclear.
How many is known to be a fan of Evan Ferguson? Everyone's a fan of Evan Ferguson.
Well, yes.
Unless you know anything about anything, you're a fan of Evan Ferguson.
But we love talking.
He's known to be a fan of Evan Ferguson. I mean, Evan Ferguson is an 18-year-old footballer who's taken the world by storm in a team that's mid-ranking, a decent mid-ranking team.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, that's not even. He's known to be a fan of.
But we like hearing that non-Irish people are also.
We're still quite insecure about about Ireland in general. It's like we're still the Irish Times new to the parish. Ireland is great. People are very friendly, and it's like the top read story.
Yeah. Irish fans are the best in the world.
Yeah, Evan Ferguson is great though.
He is fantastic. So Brighton face United in the FA Cup semi-final at Wembley next weekend. It's unclear if this ankle issue will clear up. Which?
This weekend.
Sorry, this weekend. Is it? Oh yeah. So next weekend is.
I've had this.
Is next weekend the following week?
I've had this debate with you. It's this weekend.
This weekend.
Yeah, I would. Next weekend is the weekend upcoming for me. It's like this is the next one. No, it's the next one. It's like the next weekend.
No,
why would it be the one after?
Well, why would you?
This weekend, not next weekend.
What's this weekend then?
Both the same thing.
Both.
No.
You can say
next
both.
weekend is next week.
Dan McDonnell was going to that game, and so he was texting me on Saturday. Ferguson, really worried emoji, and I was thinking he must be out for 6 months. Not at all. It's just Dan.
Isn't that match?
Exactly. So Dan's trip to watch the cup game was all about Ferguson, and to be fair, it's a first world problem.
Oh, he's going to Wembley.
Yeah,
he's going to Wembley.
Grand. It's just Dan
eating caviar in the press box.
Yeah. There we are.
Sure, Dan'll find his way to make
Wrap
that
it up.
enjoyable.
Well, Dan's saying it's unclear if Ferguson will be fit to play Man United in the league on the 4th of May, let alone this weekend.
After. So
It did, like OTB Saturday now is just like, especially because the Brighton Chelsea game was actually on, so it was like Ferguson watching. Anytime he sneezes, we're injured.
Yeah. Can you both remember when he was really highly rated before he kicked the ball, kicked the senior football? Did we talk about him like he was the next big thing?
Yeah.
See, I'm forgetting about it now because he has delivered and we've seen so many examples.
Vinny will definitely be better versed to talk about that. Vinny's very good friends with his dad as well, and he was, because when he was, but you just can't put that much pressure on a 14-year-old because most of the time it goes wrong, or a 15-year-old, and it predated him playing for Bows against Chelsea at 14 because he was so big. And we spoke to Keith Ward on our podcast this week, and he said Ferguson could do the basics straight away, and he said you can't underestimate that. He could keep a ball, trap it and pass it to the wing at 14.
That's an interesting point. Keith Tracy was on last week, and he was saying that. I think we were even saying it off air, and he's definitely said it on air before. It's like, you'd be surprised the amount of top level footballers who can't do what you just said, Johnny, like real basic stuff like get the ball, pass the ball, keep the ball, run. And like you say, Ferguson does the basics really, really well.
Tracy,
world class basics.
Good football brain, I'd say.
So did Keith Tracy. That man could play ball.
Yeah,
couldn't he?
So I
almost forget. I actually typed him in on YouTube when he was next to me to see if I could find any highlights, but I couldn't find anything of him. But I do remember him being a fantastic
So I'm playing for
player.
Pats. Like, he was well overweight. He won't mind me admitting at the time in Europe against a decent team, and he was still running the show.
He said with us last week. He said he was in Fat Club. Like
He did the You Had to Be There last week.
Wow.
And it was very good. Now you would have enjoyed that now. I mean, you'll enjoy today's one as well. And look, the other thing as well is that we had loads of talking points for this morning. All football, like we've the WSL last night, Manchester United about to win the league, the Champions League, and this goes to show Ferguson's impact. We read this story and we're like, put him up to the top.
It has to be like, and we had Irish scores last night. I should mention Adamida scored for Norwich away in a 1-1 draw at QPR, and a couple of Irish scores for Preston as well, albeit they lost 4-2 away to Swansea. Tom Cannon and Troy Parrott both in the score sheet, which is positive.
I think Ryan Manning set up one of the goals, and it does look like, just reading during the week, it does look like he is going to depart. And Russell Martin just seems a massive fan of Ryan Manning, and it'll be interesting to see if Stephen Kenny brings him back in or where he is in the Ireland setup. But the Ferguson one for me, Bows are obviously just waiting, and I presume St. Kevin's as well are waiting to see what happens here, because like potentially if my figures are right, Bows could be on the cusp of making about 10 million from an Evan Ferguson move. Because I think if you were saying, Colm, the figure in Dan's face was 40 million, like he's worth far more than that. I mean, let's be honest, like he's not even physically there yet. And his performances, considering his inexperience, I'm not sure, like, is Evan Ferguson, like, I don't like anyone comparing him to Erling Haaland because that's ridiculous, but he's worth a lot more than 40 million.
Well, Cian Rowe has messaged in on the YouTube, and please keep the comments coming in on the show this morning. He says, resident Dubai listener, lads. Morning, Cian. Or what time is it in Dubai? They're ahead of us, aren't they?
Yeah, it'd be about 4 hours.
Heading for the early afternoon, I suppose. In today's inflated market, with the lack of old school number 9s, what does Ferguson sell for? 80 million-ish is not tough to imagine.
It's funny he says old school. There's a lot of old school in him, but his touches, like, I actually would... I think from watching both of them this season, whatever I've seen, I think Ferguson's probably a better player outside the box than Haaland. I think his touches are actually better.
Yeah.
Haaland has pace that Ferguson probably will never have. That's the one thing. But he's an old school number 9. But he's so much quality to his game, I think, as well, outside the box, and really intelligent, and makes runs that look simple but aren't, I think.
The thing I gathered from Evan when I interviewed him at the end of last year was he has a confidence that just belies his age. He's like, it's almost like an arrogance. You know the way in interviews Erling Haaland definitely has an arrogance, which you maybe need to be that good. Evan is just on the precipice of having that arrogance, and you can sense that the more interviews he does and the more he plays first team football, that arrogance and confidence is going to be on the increase, and that's a good thing. You know, I want to be hearing Evan Ferguson in interviews being aggressive and arrogant and cocky, that he should be. He's a number 9 in the Premier League.
That's not the Irish thing to do, though.
Well, that's the thing.
No, it's not.
But no one would blame him because he's a top talent.
No, I think his dad Barry seems to have, and his mother, whose name I don't know. Apologies, I only know Barry's name because obviously he played in the League of Ireland and that. A good friend of Vinny's, but I think they've obviously done an amazing job. They're a very sporting family, but he's almost been raised.
Sarah is the mother.
So Sarah and Barry have almost, I would say, raised Evan with a view to being a professional footballer. And they probably, at a very early age, said most kids want to be a professional footballer. it's odds on that Evan will be good enough to at least play as a professional footballer at some level. Let's raise him accordingly and see what happens with the physique that he has. He has the pedigree to be a footballer from his dad's background as well, and he's probably almost been single-minded with that goal in mind, and he's just improving. I think the tutelage that he had at Kevin's and Bowes, I think for Bowes to put him in a game against Chelsea at 14, I mean, if anything goes wrong there, it'll be all over like Joe Duffy, and it'll be like, why are you playing a 14-year-old? It'll be all over the papers, but they knew what they were doing with him. Yeah. And so did Barry.
A few more comments coming in. Did you check out the Eclipse, Shane? Pink Floyd had some live stream covering it while playing Dark Side in its entirety. Got up for it. See, the Total Solar Eclipse was the Australian Outback got the best part, so I didn't quite make it. I'm actually going to go over to America. There's a Total Solar Eclipse coming across the United States in 2024. Going to go over and see it. Of course, cover your eyes, folks, and don't look directly at the sun. But yeah, that's a slight departure from the sport this morning. Georgie Kelly also scored for Rotherham last night. If he stays fit next season, he'll score a lot of goals. That's from Edward. That was actually Tuesday night.
2 nights ago, yeah. A lot of our scores, encouraging. Cannon as well seems to be really. I haven't seen him play. It seems to be really creating waves, and I think Stephen Kenny will be very encouraged by those 3 guys scoring goals. They're all on the periphery of Evan Ferguson's position, I suppose, at the moment. The
WSL, you mentioned it, Colm, last night. Manchester United beating Arsenal by 1-0. Alessia Russo with the goal. Lovely assist as well from Nikita Paris. If you watch that goal back, she moves down the right-hand flank and
good pull back,
bit of composure to kind of pull the ball back and keep the heads-up football to spot Russo in the middle. United now top of the WSL on 44 points from 18 matches. Chelsea on 40 points. 4 points off them with 16 games, so they have 2 games in hand. Chelsea. Arsenal in third on 38 points from 17 games. Kind of looking like a United-Chelsea title battle. United have never won the WSL, but top 3 finish in Champions League football for next season is probably number 1 priority. If they can win a league, that would be brilliant. But a concerning injury for Leah Williamson as well.
Big time, yeah. That's the big story of the last night. 12 minutes on the clock, and England captain went down injured, and straight away gestured that it was something significant. And Arsenal are having an injury crisis, and like our own Katie McCabe, she was suspended last night, but they have also other injuries like Kim Little and Vivian Miedema and Beth Mead, and like Williamson was only playing in midfield because of this injury crisis, and now she's gone as well. So Arsenal are kind of fast emerging as the kind of crisis story of the WSL, whereas Manchester United are the team on the up and look like they're going to win the league. And our own Aoife Mannion, she played last night as well for United, so that's another good Irish angle. And also the other game last night, Brighton beat Everton 3-2. Megan Connolly played the full game for Brighton, and Courtney Brosnan in goal for Everton too. So less than 100 days out for the World Cup. Concerning for England. Is that good news for Ireland?
I suppose we're not in the same group.
I don't be begrudging them too much.
I think they have Haiti, Denmark and China in their group, England. But
they might rally as a result. That's the thing.
This is it. But it's funny in the World Cup year, you're like constantly watching Irish players in matches and going, just don't get injured.
Yeah,
that's like as you say, Evan Ferguson on a Saturday. We almost get obsessed when we realise we have a talented bunch of players that we're like, please don't get injured. And people making point in the comments, because he's a big man, Ferguson, does that make him more prone to injury? I don't know. But what I do know is that we're watching Evan and we're watching all these Irish players in the WSL as well ahead of the World Cup with a little bit of nervousness and tension. You can't enjoy it.
Yeah, at the same time though, they can't play like that.
No, of course.
They have to play like a Kenny training session and just like go hammer and tongs, and we're probably. I don't think we need worry necessarily much about England in terms of England to be like just a little bit a step ahead of us at the moment.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's what I mean about it.
But yeah, it's 100 days, so like this will come upon us very quickly now.
Oh yeah, a good deal less, but like we are on McCabe watch, aren't we? For the whole season. I mean, she recovered from that injury remarkably fast after the Bayern collapse, which remember the concern the next morning after that. But like we'll take a suspension all day, and as Emma Carroll said beforehand, you wish she was suspended for a lot of the rest of the season, so she's good to go for the World Cup. But at the same time, like you said, Johnny, you kind of need match sharpness and match fitness.
Absolutely.
And take the risk of this injury and play high intensity football, because you saw the World Cup at the end of last year. It actually benefited the games like that World Cup final. You'd forget it was one of the great finals in sporting history.
Remember that,
and I really do strongly feel that because it was like a quarter of the way into the domestic season, that players were good to go.
It's
absolutely
it's certainly something we'll be keeping an eye on. Denise O'Sullivan, Emma Carroll points out for us, Denise O'Sullivan scored a screamer last night as well, so we're big time on Irish player watch at the moment. Champions League action last night, it's funny, like ordinarily if there was a Champions League quarter-final second leg, we'd be straight trying to get to it at the top of the show, but it hasn't really materialised the Champions League last 8 this year. Now I'm looking forward to the to the Man City Real Madrid game and the Milan derby and the other semi-final as well, but just feels like the quarterfinals maybe didn't light up the way we had hoped. Everyone was eyeing up this City Bayern game as going to be a cracker, but 4-1 in aggregate and quite comfortable last night for City.
I think Frank Lampard getting the job, I don't think it helped Chelsea's chance of turnaround. Like, I don't think Real Madrid are actually really that good. Like, they're no, but you can get at them. Like, you can. I mean, Man City. If Man City don't win the Champions League now, Pep should nearly give up. Like, this is they've Real Madrid to beat, and Real Madrid have very good players, but they're still very reliant on two lads essentially in their mid to late 30s. Like, and they do cough up chances. Like, Chelsea should have scored 2 or 3 really on Tuesday night, and Chelsea are no good at the moment. Like, they put in a good shift, but they I think if they'd stayed loyal to the manager and just given him a bit of a chance, because they weren't playing badly in Europe and they gave themselves a chance at 2-0, get the first goal. But Lampard, I don't think he's inspiring confidence in the players. For me, I felt once they conceded, the game was over. They had no real confidence in front of goal. The game last night was kind of, I think that was gone. If Sané scores that chance,
I thought the first half was very good.
Yeah, if Sané scores, I think Man City
needed a Bayern goal
it did, but
Man City are probably still a little mentally brittle because they've had so many of these bad experiences in the Champions League. 1-0 would have made it interesting. Again, the VAR and the penalties. I mean, that
Bayern penalty decision is...
Yeah, but the Man City one was nearly worse. Like, it's like, that's just not a penalty. I mean, you can't, like, you're doing all you can not to handle the ball, and then, like, it's just a natural thing that his hand half moves, and it's never a penalty. And it's anyway. And then
is it just me, or is the obsession with handball in the penalty area a modern?
Oh, it's taken off.
A modern thing, because I don't remember if you want. Yeah, but even just before VAR came out, because like any time there's any ball delivered kind of midriff area, you get everyone claiming for a penalty if it hits the opposition anywhere in the body, right? And if you watch games back from 10 to 20 years ago, I don't think it was as prevalent. No, I could be wrong, like, but I feel like it's increasing by each season. There is an absolute obsession with handball.
I think it's one of the most stupid rules, honestly. If you're anyway playing in a position and trying to make a tackle, your hands are going to move. It's a simple.
You're allowed to pick the ball up. Is that what you're saying, Johnny?
You should be allowed to handle the ball when you don't intend to handle the ball.
Well, they do the Liam Gallagher pose is the only way to get out of it.
Like don't put your hands out like that.
Footballers are very good at deceiving, so they can make it look like they didn't intend.
If you have your hands, Vinnie Perth might talk about this, because Dundalk were really cruelly denied in 2016 by when they played Leggy at home. It was 1-0 in Lansdowne Road, and this ridiculous penalty was given against Andy Boyle for his hands that were effectively behind his back, falling on the ground. Like a terrible decision. And there's a lot of controversy about referees at the moment. You can't give handball. You don't understand the game if you don't realise that players, when they're moving and flailing to stop across as you do, don't give a handball for that. And the handballs that are given, the handball that Haaland for that penalty, that is the most stupid penalty ever. But it was probably now a penalty in the rules of the game. So
you say you don't know the game if you're giving penalties like that, but the problem is there's a written rule for the handball, so they have to clarify it in the rules, right?
It's absolutely stupid.
Last night, watching the replay of the Ilkay Gundogan shot that hits there at Upamecano, right? And I'm thinking at the time, I was like, oh, that's not a penalty. Saw the replay. And what I was saying to myself out loud was like, oh, that's ridiculous.
But it's a penalty.
Ellipsis, but he had to give it.
Yeah.
Because it hit his arm.
Look, and so but
if the ref doesn't give it, that's not last night's ref's fault.
Yeah.
So like the ref last night is like, I have to give this because he's handled it. But the handball made absolutely no difference really to the trajectory of the shot. Like Sommer was going to save that Gundogan shot, like unless it was a Tim Flowers style howler from back in the day. He was going to catch that ball. So hitting Upamecano's arm didn't actually affect the outcome of the ball, which is really what a handball should be. If it affects the outcome of where it's going, but you can't write that down. No, because that's a huge grey area.
A handball should be if there was no intention of me handling the ball, and I more or less did my best not to have my hands in an unnatural position. It's not a handball. That was the rule back in the day, and that was quite. You're talking about a split second from the ball being hit to hitting his hand, and then they showed in slow motion, and his hands vaguely move. Purely natural, and he's doing everything he can. He's doing everything he can not to handle the ball, and his hands purely naturally move a little bit. It hits his hand. That's never a penalty if you know anything about football. Yet it is a penalty.
It is a penalty.
That's ridiculous.
How could you write that rule? How could you concisely write the rule that you're talking about?
The old rule was like, if there's no intention, it's not a handball. It's effective.
But how do you deem what intention is?
That's up to the discretion of the referee. And hey, why don't we let the referees actually call the game?
Johnny, get off the fence. Get off the fence.
The handball thing is just it's so ridiculous. And Vinny should be able to recall that, because if Dundalk had gone into Warsaw 1-0 down, as they should have, they were 1-0 up with 10 men. That would have been 1-1 with 20 minutes to go. Like, that was one of the most stupid handballs. Remember Lee Carsley was against Turkey back in the day? Another one. It was like,
like West Ham had an absolutely crucial win there the other week away to Fulham 1-0.
Yeah.
And the build-up was a handball by Soufal, the right back. So that's like, you arguably saved David Moyes' job, those little things. But for that instance, that for me was a clear handball and a free out to Fulham, because his handball changed the direction of the ball. So it changed the play. And therefore, if his arm wasn't there, the ball would have continued behind him.
Your arm is there, so if you want to tie people's hands behind their backs, and
you can't handle it.
That's fine.
You can't handle it.
But your arms are there.
So if it affects where the ball is going, if it changes the direction of the ball,
then it has to.
Then you should be penalised for that.
No.
My opinion about Upamecano last night was it made no difference. So I was like this, but he had to give it because his arm was out.
Go back to the old rules, where it was, if you didn't intend to handle the ball, it's not a handball. Simple as that. If the ball hammers me in the head, I didn't intend to be knocked out.
Why do you think they changed the rules?
I don't know. I mean, they have a lot of stupid rules now. I don't know.
There had to be a reason for it, because there was too many handballs that were not being penalised, that were affecting the results of the game.
No, but if the ref has the discretion, he actually kind of knew what he was doing there, and it's debatable. That's fine, because we're going to have debatable decisions. But you can't be handling the ball on the basis of a split second hitting his hand when he was trying not to handle it.
Also, the frustrating thing about this is
literally trying not to handle the ball.
The rules are so strict, right, that almost every top level game now, the big talking point the next day is a decision or a non-decision. And it seems to me it's increasingly rare that you're talking about a tactical nuance in the game, and you're really like, this big decision that changed the game.
Clickbait,
so Upamecano, straight red card that was ruled out for offside. So that was delayed.
By the way, Upamecano has forgotten how to play football over those two legs. He just didn't have a clue.
It was the Ireland game really affected him.
Ferguson messed him up.
And then the handball decision is another one. And then Bayern get a penalty, like you said, Johnny, at the end. Shearburn, okay, that's another decision. So that's the big thing, the decisions. But really, we should talk about the back and forth in the first half. Where Bayern really had a go and were destroying Man City in the flanks.
We do have a couple of comments.
Full-backs, they couldn't deal with it.
We have a couple of comments on the handball issue. 91 Devo says, agrees with you, Johnny. These wishy-washy handball calls are ruining the game. Both calls last night were a joke. Bobby Dwyer, and I kind of agree with Bobby here, he says the referee has to ask himself, do I think the defender is deliberately trying to gain an advantage by handling the ball? There's always going to be subjectivity and ambiguity about it, which is fair.
Shane,
straight jacket for all players, says Pete.
That was the old rule. It was like, if you didn't intend to handle it, it wasn't a handball, and it was very, very simple, and 90% of the time there was no intention. Now, you can't block across going like this, right? But if you block across like this and you're trying to keep your hand, it's not a handball. And these things, and then they showed in slow motion, and it's like, nothing happens in slow motion, by the way. It did not happen in slow motion. Now technically it's a handball. It's a stupid rule made up by people who don't understand the game.
What they do, like, if you're leaving up to the discretion of the referee, then you're basically you're exposing the ref, so they can get huge abuse, right?
No, but
they're doing it. They're almost protecting the referees. It's like, this is the rule, just follow that rule.
Referees like making decisions. That's why they became referees. They didn't become referees to defer to VAR. Do you know what I mean? Referees like to make decisions. That's why they're doing their job. And if they get it wrong, they get it wrong.
I think they like to be seen to be consistent and fair.
They like keeping fair.
Rather than making decisions.
But decisions will be subjective, and that's why we're here talking about them. But not this stupid handball rule.
I would say there's no writing in the rules of football that it's up to discretion of the referee anymore. Almost none. The subjectivity has to be outlawed in the new rules, I'd imagine. Especially if you live in a VAR world.
Aside from the handball issue, right? Haaland takes the goal very well. By a collector's edition, by the way. Haaland missing a penalty.
Yeah, because was it the first and 13? Was it?
It took about 4.5 minutes for the penalty to be taken, and Goretzka got away with some nice shithousery by saying to the ref, "Oh, did you see that little object there?" It was like, sure, why would he care about that? Yeah. And the ref was like, "Oh yeah, cool, thanks for that, nice one."
What a move!
They were a little bit rattled in the first half. That's the thing, and I do wonder, can Real just do them again and get at them mentally? Because City should win this game. Simple as, they've better players, they have better, they've Haaland, but I'm still not sure.
A man once told me, I once interviewed a man called Captain Gene Cernan, who's a hero of mine, last man to walk on the moon, back to space.
Remember that, yeah.
Literally have a quote of his tattooed
on me. The moon belongs to America.
It does. We're talking about Jessica Harrington, Moon, later on, but we'll get to that. Terrible segue. But
Moon with an E.
Exactly. Essentially, this man told me, he was trying to describe the fact that, people look at me differently because I walked on the moon, and this, but they don't realise I bleed when I cut myself. I put my trousers on one leg at a time, and that's what I was thinking when Haaland blazed the penalty over last night. I was like, oh,
I thought of
that quote. I was like, he is actually human. Haaland bleeds when he cuts himself, just like us. He puts his trousers on one leg at a time. Do you know, he is actually not a robot. But 48 goals this season.
48 goals.
But still, he can miss penalties.
Channeling is Luke Davenport. Do you get the reference?
I don't get the reference. Please explain.
Do you get the reference?
No.
Harchester United in Dream Team signed Luke Davenport. And I think he scored about 15 goals in his first 5 games. Then his eye fell out and he had to retire from football. And Hallen's the best thing since Davenport.
I think that is a great reference point, Harchester United, for the game that was on in Talca Park.
Oh, yeah.
The same day as Shamrock Rovers were playing Bows in what is the biggest Irish, certainly the biggest derby in the Republic of Ireland, and there were more at the Harchester game in Talca than went to watch Bows and Rovers, which was probably the nadir for the League of Ireland compared to the, if not utopia, the way it is now, which is certainly the best buzz it's been since I started supporting it.
Someone says took less than 2 minutes for Johnny Ward to mention League of Ireland. No, that's the first mention, is it?
Well, we have a League of
25
Ireland
League of Ireland slot this morning as well, if any person.
And there's what's happening.
Deservedly so.
Also, I'm just going to set this up for the Vinny chat.
Please do.
When Vinny comes in. But we were talking pre-show, and the word cool was used to describe the League of Ireland now. And so we had a bit of a debate about when exactly it became cool to support the League of Ireland. Some people thought it was quite a while ago. Some people thought it was more recent. But it does feel like it is kind of the place to be increasingly. And there is a nice association, increasingly so, in my opinion, with the League of Ireland.
There is. Jonathan Gabay was brought over to...
Why is that, is the question, I suppose.
Why is that? A journalist rang me from this parish, actually, to get a quote on that yesterday. I don't really have the answer. I think there are a myriad of issues, but partly I think it is because it's not the Premier League. It's not... we don't have like state-owned teams beating each other.
Do you think that's what it is? That people are becoming disillusioned with the
we've come out of the pandemic in a great. The 4 things I would say.
I don't think that's it.
I'd be interested to hear.
How can I relate to Newcastle beating Manchester City?
Yeah, but if you're an Irish Newcastle fan in the 80s and 90s, you're still a Newcastle fan.
What
today.
are your 4 things there, Johnny?
The 4 things for me are social media has been massive. Like the social media, you're bombarded with League of Ireland stuff on social media every day now, whether you like it or not. If you're in that circle, all for free. I have a love-hate relationship with social media, but it's been amazing for the League of Ireland. The underage teams coming in, right? So if you have 14s, 15s, 17s, 19s, that's about 100 people straight away who are now involved in the club. They have boyfriends, girlfriends, they have parents, they have friends that are necessarily now talking about the League of Ireland. A lot of them are going to games. You have the women's leg of it coming in, which has become massive as well, more or less a broader part of what I was saying. Brexit and all these young players playing in it has made it really interesting. And you know what the last thing is, and maybe the most important thing is, it's a bloody good standard and it's very good to watch at times now. It's really like every game in the Premier Division is very watchable. The standard of the game between Shells and Shamrock Rovers was sensational at times last Friday. And anyone who watched that game would have been proud to say that they were at that game.
It was good. I watched it. It was good. Yeah.
I don't feel like the rise in the League of Ireland is to do with Irish fans of English teams getting disillusioned with state takeovers.
You don't think so?
Not a chance.
No,
really?
not so much that, but it's like young people have options now of maybe going to a League of Ireland game or being overly invested in an English team. And I'm not sure they are as much anymore.
There's a lot of people.
Maybe I'm wrong.
There's a lot of people now, I find, people who follow teams over in England who now follow League of Ireland teams as well. And look, you don't have to. They're not mutually exclusive. You can support the League of Ireland and still go over to England and watch Liverpool or Manchester United or Celtic or whoever. Like, people seem to feel there seems to be this split that's like you have to pick one. You have to pick one. You can't support Man United and Pats.
There isn't really any more. I don't think
the
League of Ireland fans aren't as insecure as they were as well. In that, I just think now so many people are going to games. There are people putting stuff on Instagram that I know last Friday at the Bows game. I was like, I can't believe A, that you're at League of Ireland game, and B, that you're promoting the fact that you're at League of Ireland game on social media. It has become cool.
Do you think there is an increase in interest in the League of Ireland?
Oh, for
would
sure.
you agree with that?
Yeah.
And why would you disagree that it is a disillusionment with the game abroad?
I don't think there's any.
What do you think? In other words, what do you think the reason is for the increase in interest?
It is. It's everyone can see the League of Ireland now. It's on TV more. The attendances are up. The ticket.
Not on TV that much.
No, but I think it's been, as you said, Johnny. It's been promoted. Social media is where we're all seeing it. Like
social media,
it has become the cool thing. I kind of live. Where I am in Smithfield is probably halfway between Bows and Pats, and my housemates and me are like, we have to. Who are we going to pick? Do you know? But it's like, 'cause you go to the nearest team.
Yeah.
Like, I obviously can't support Man United anymore in the League of Ireland, unfortunately.
Were you a ball boy in Gort Keegan back?
I was back in the day.
The next step for the League of Ireland column is the like of Man United coming back and being given the financial incentives from the league, which don't exist at the moment, to come back, because it still makes very little sense for a first division club. Kerry are doing an amazing job, but the pitfalls are huge. We need Monaghan, Kilkenny, we need teams in Cavan, Portlaoise, Mayo. We need teams to make it a genuine national league, because it still isn't, and I think that's the next step, as well as obviously facilities.
Yeah, we'll 100% get to more of that with Vinnie Perth, because it's an interesting conversation. Like the
standard is good, Shane. That's the main thing. If you bring somebody, like when I was a League of Ireland fan initially, it was hard to sell it, because if you watch the game on TV, particularly relative to a Premier League game at the time, it was shite. Like, let's be honest, it was poor. It was hard to watch. It just isn't now. But all the teams are playing football.
It's also having names like Damien Duff managing teams.
100%. That's another thing. The coaching levels, I think, are outstanding. Like
100%,
really good. And the other thing, Colm, these coaches are in Ireland now. They're not in England. The jobs just aren't there in England. They're not even in the. They're not, like, Stephen Bradley could have gotten the Lincoln job, but other than that, they're not even listed as being potential. And now you have Stephen O'Donnell, Stephen Bradley, Damien Duff, Colin Healy, Rory Higgins, Stephen O'Donnell, Tim Clancy, all these young managers in the League of Ireland.
Yeah, and I do agree with your point that you've made before, Johnny, where you're saying, you know, there have to be more teams in Mayo, teams in Monaghan, teams in Tip, counties and areas that don't necessarily are not represented necessarily by League of Ireland teams.
And for young kids, Shane,
100%.
Say if young Shane Hannon is like, if not going to become the next Evan Ferguson, he's the Evan Ferguson of...
I tried my best.
If you're the Evan Ferguson of County Monaghan, right, you need to go beyond Monaghan town and say, I need to play underage level now. And I think Monaghan, Cavan, I think there might be a team up there, but I need a good underage system to bring me to the next level in my locality, rather than having to go to Dublin like the old days.
Yeah, it's geography, isn't it? Because people were saying to me, sure, when Monaghan United finished up, sure, go and support Dundalk. But I was like, Dundalk were literally Monaghan's closest rivals.
Yeah.
So you can't do that.
Yeah.
Do you know, but I do watch Dundalk matches now and wish them all the best, and actually hope that they do well. But it's not like you can move to the next. It's not like a Bows fan is going to go and support Pats or Rovers if Bows went out of existence. That's not the way it works.
We were for time immemorial in this country, we were generally indoctrinated and brought up in the Catholic Church, and we just went to mass and didn't think about it, right? It's the same with Gaelic games, right? We're brought up, and this county thing is completely enshrined in our head. I'm from Galway, and I'm never going to support like Mayo, Sligo, Roscommon.
That's fair enough, though.
So, and that does seep into like League of Ireland mindset. Then if you're from Mayo, it's just hard for Mayo people to support Galway United, because they hate Galway in football. So why would I support them? And that's completely natural. It's not natural for you to want to support Dundalk if you used to go to Monaghan United games.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's not natural at all. They were our rivals. Exactly. I want to support a Monaghan United team back in the League of Ireland.
100%.
With Monaghan players.
Yeah, and that's the way to look at it.